Hi there, welcome to Whiteboard Econ. Today I'm going to make sure you understand the basics of supply and demand. So, stick till the end and you'll understand. If you walk into a supermarket, you will see the shelves stocked with thousands of products. But have you ever wondered why these products are on the shelves? Who produced them? Why they are produced and who decided which products are sold? Probably not. The answer? Markets. Markets are a key concept in economics. A market is a simplification of reality because it's impossible to investigate the whole economy. A market can be defined as any place where buyers and sellers of either goods or services make exchanges. This could be the previously mentioned supermarket, but also the internet on places such as Amazon or eBay. These exchanges are made voluntarily because that's the only way that both the buyer and the seller are better off. As an example, let's say you would like to buy an avocado at the supermarket for $2. The supermarket values the avocado lower than the $2 and you value the avocado higher than the $2. In this case, you're both better off. This holds for all kinds of markets, such as the labor market, the forex market and the cryptocurrency market. So not just the market for avocados. But how is the price of the avocado determined exactly? The price of the avocado is determined based on the demand and on the supply of avocados. Let's have a look at the demand curve first. On the y-axis we have the price of avocados. On the x-axis we have the quantity of avocados. In the graph you can see the inverse demand curve of avocados. This means that the price of the avocado is a function of the quantity of avocados demanded. When the price is low, people will start to demand large quantities of avocados. On the other hand, when the price is high, people will demand very little quantities of avocados. So what we have seen is that the change in price causes a shift along the demand curve, but there are other factors that shift the demand curve itself to the left or to the right. This means that there are other factors apart from the price that affect the demand for avocados. The first factor that can change the demand curve is the number of consumers or buyers in the market. When there are a lot of people in the market wanting to buy avocados, the quantity of avocados demanded increases. This causes the demand curve to shift to the right or outwards. When there are not many people wanting to buy avocados, the quantity of avocados demanded decreases. This causes a shift of the demand curve to the left or inwards. The second factor that influences demand for avocados and which is therefore able to shift the demand curve is the price of other goods. This could be the price of substitutes or complements. So not for avocados but for goods that are related to avocados in some way. Let's take a look at substitutes first. A substitute is a good that can be used instead of another good because they are comparable to each other. A substitute for avocados could be eggs, for example. People enjoy eggs on their toast as well as enjoy avocados on their toast. If the price of eggs increase, people would want to buy more avocados because they substitute eggs for avocados. This shifts the demand curve for avocados to the right or outwards. If the price of eggs decrease, people will want to buy less avocados. This shifts the demand curve for avocados to the left or inwards. Now that we have covered substitutes, we are going to focus on complements. Complementary goods are goods that consumers would like to buy together. In the case of avocados, this could be some kind of seasoning, because most people will eat avocados with seasoning such as salt or pepper. In this case, if the price of seasoning falls, people will want to buy more avocados. This shifts the demand curve to the right or outwards. However, when the price of seasoning increases, people will want to buy less avocados. This shifts the demand curve for avocados to the left or inwards. The third factor that could shift the demand curve is the wealth or income of the consumers. We can make the distinction here between normal and inferior goods. An avocado is probably a normal good, meaning that an increase in consumer income increases the quantity of avocados demanded. This shifts the demand curve to the right or outwards. On the other hand, a decrease in consumer income shifts the demand curve to the left or inwards, following the same logic. An inferior good is a good that gets bought less when consumer income increases. An example of this is instant noodles. When you don't have much money to spend, instant noodles are an affordable meal. However, rich people are not so likely to choose instant noodles as their favorite choice of meal. The last factor that can cause a shift in the demand curve is consumer preference or taste. If a study shows that eating avocados allows you to live longer, this will probably increase the demand for avocados, and therefore cause a shift of the demand curve to the right or outwards. But if instead of that the study shows that eating avocados causes illness in the long run, this will decrease demand significantly, and therefore shift the demand curve to the left or inwards. Those were the factors that shift the demand curve for avocados. I would again like to stress that the price of avocados does not shift the demand curve but causes a shift along the demand curve. This is very important. Now that we know everything about the demand curve, Let's draw the supply curve in the market for avocados next, which is upward sloping. Again, on the y-axis we have the price of avocados, and on the x-axis we have the quantity of avocados. This makes sense because when avocados sell for a high price, say $10, producers will be inclined to produce lots of avocados. However, when an avocado sells for only 20 cents, barely any producer will decide it's worth it to start growing avocados. So just as with the demand side of the model, changes in the price of avocados cause a shift along the supply curve. The supply curve can shift too, just as the demand curve. This can happen because of a couple of factors. The first factor that shifts the supply curve is the number of suppliers in the market. When there are many sellers of avocados, this causes an increase in the supply of avocados. This shifts the supply curve to the right or outwards. When there aren't many suppliers of avocados in the market, there is not a lot of supply of avocados. This causes the supply curve to shift to the left or inwards. The second factor that can shift the supply curve is the price of another good. When the farmers grow avocados, they are unable to grow some other crop. But when the price of another crop such as tomatoes rise, the farmer will choose to grow tomatoes instead of avocados, because he can make more money. This will shift the supply curve to the left or inwards. The third factor that can shift the supply curve is the cost of inputs for producers. In the case of avocados, it can happen that some kind of fertilizer becomes more expensive. This decreases the number of avocados supplied and therefore shifts the supply curve to the left or inwards. The opposite happens when the price of fertilizer decreases. The last factor that can shift the supply curve is technology. When a machine is invented that can harvest the avocados much cheaper and more effectively, this will increase the number of avocados supplied. This will cause the supply curve to shift outwards. So, stressing this again, any of the previously mentioned factors cause a shift in the supply curve. A change in the price of avocados causes a shift along the supply curve. With the supply curve and the demand curve for avocados both covered, we can finally draw them into the same graph. We can observe that there's only one point in the graph in which supply equals demand, and this point is called the market equilibrium. Now we can find the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. The equilibrium price is the price for which the avocados demanded equals the quantity of avocados supplied. A change in the price of avocados causes movement along the supply curve and the demand curve. When the price is high, producers are willing to supply a lot of avocados. However, at this price, there are only a couple of consumers willing to buy the avocados. This causes an excess in the supply of avocados, which is called a surplus. A surplus in the market for avocados is also called a disequilibrium. A disequilibrium can also occur when the price of avocados is really low. This causes consumers to demand a lot of avocados, but suppliers are not willing to supply them, because they will not be profitable at this price. This causes an excess demand, which is also called a shortage. In the free market, both a surplus and a shortage are unlikely to happen. In case of a surplus, producers will start lowering their prices to be able to sell their excess until the market ends up in equilibrium again. In case of a shortage, consumers will start offering more money for the produced goods, which also causes the market to end up in an equilibrium again. Now that we have covered the basics of supply and demand, we can draw the market of avocados and see what happens in different scenarios. If you have paid attention very closely or have experience in supply and demand, you have noticed that there are only 4 scenarios that can happen. Demand increases, demand decreases, supply increases, and supply decreases. We have seen that when there are more consumers in the market, this shifts the demand curve to the right or outwards. This increases the price and quantity demanded of avocados. When a study shows that avocados cause illness, the demand curve shifts to the left or inwards. This decreases the price and quantity demanded of avocados. When a machine is invented that can harvest the avocados much cheaper and much more effectively, this will increase the number of avocado supplies and shift the supply curve to the right or outwards. This decreases the price and increases the quantity demanded of avocados. When fertilizer becomes more expensive, supply decreases, shifting the supply curve to the left or inwards. This would increase the price, but decrease the quantity demanded of avocados. And this is a beer. I will be able to afford one if you subscribe and like this video if it was helpful. See you soon in my next video.